Hello, welcome to the Viewpoint. I am Mahmoud Mboj. Today we're going to talk about a book titled The Dictator is Us, My Truth Commission Journey, written by someone who was the Director of Research and Investigations of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission. It is a more than 300-page book in 26 chapters, really an eloquent and insightful behind-the-scenes account of the footwork, the sobering, sometimes nerve-wracking legwork entailed in carrying out the TRRC mandate. And I have to say the book is also peppered with social and political commentary, some of which are quite dagger-sharp. By way of introduction, I don't think I can do any better than what the Executive Secretary of the TRRC, Dr. Babagala Jara, writes in his foreword. And I will read directly from the book. He says of my guest today, he had precisely the educational background and professional pedigree we needed on our team. A veteran of the U.S. Army, he holds a BSc degree in criminal justice from Tennessee State University and an MA in national security studies from the American Military University in Charlestown, West Virginia. Having served for over a decade with the U.S. military, where he rose to the rank of captain before resigning in January 2014 with an honorable discharge. And he goes on to say a lot more. Buy the book. I've got here Mr. Alhaji Saidi Barra.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Viewpoint.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. This is the book. Alhaji Saidi Barra. The Dictator is Us. The Truth Commission, My Truth Commission Journey. Before we get into the book, Mr. Barra, I wonder now what you're doing. I understand you've got your consultancy on security.
Yes, I call it a hustle. Okay. I have a consultancy called LISS, L-I-S-S. It's 4 core competencies on leadership, investigations, strategic communications, and security management. That's what I've been operating over the last few years.
That's it. And your book, the title, The Dictator is Us, I had to sort of stand back a bit and say, somehow I stand accused of something in this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It seems we are all
yes.
sort of indicted.
Yes,
indictment of some sort,
yes.
really, on everybody.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, I mean, and I can see why somebody would feel that I'm indicting everyone. Yes, but hopefully when they think of everyone, I hope they include me in that everyone as well.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Yes, so no, when I say the dictator is us, it's essentially saying that we created the dictator. This is, and the dictator being Yahya Jammeh, that he is of us, by us, and for us. You know, there is this pervasive sense of denial within Gambian society that we are better than Yahya Jammeh, as if he was an accident, something that happened to us. We are good people, and that somebody bad happened to. And I don't believe in that. I think Yahya Jammeh brought out the bad in us, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have that bad within us. And so, and also the dictator is us is essentially saying that he is of us. We created him, we made him, we supported him, we cheered him. Some voted for him, some worked extremely hard for him, some killed for him. And so us means everyone that took part in that. So that doesn't mean every single individual in the Gambia, but even if it is you, Mamadou Mbodj, and me, that makes it us, if it was just 2 of us.
That's it. And you begin to see that, of course, you'll have the active actors, those who are doing things for
Correct.
him, but again, the apathy, the sort of self-preservation, as you call it, people being scared. That in itself is a kind of complicity.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. You know, I think there's this famous saying that all that evil needs to thrive is for good men to stand and do nothing. So how good are you if you can stand and do nothing when you're watching evil.
And there's a lesson there for everybody.
Absolutely.
That's why they said that the price of what of freedom is eternal vigilance.
Vigilance. Absolutely.
In many ways.
Yes.
Now to the structure of the book, 26 chapters.
Yes.
Was that? I think you say something like sort of mimicking the 22 or so themes.
Yes.
As it were
yes.
covered in the TRRC.
Yes. It's basically mimicking the themes, and I would give credit to SFL for coming up with those investigative themes that we looked at. The TRRC was set up to look at not just human rights violations, but also what led to these violations. What were the antecedents? How did these things happen? You know, because nothing happens in a vacuum, right? So it's good to know why, you know, an individual would think it's okay for the president to tell you, go around and arrest people and take them and call them witches and take them to get them cleansed. And you think it's okay for you to obey that, and you enthusiastically go out there and arrest old men and women and subject them to torture, and you think that's okay. Something went wrong somewhere. So we can call you evil all we want, but then what precipitated your actions? What happened? Why do you think that is okay? And I think those are some of the things that I try to delve into in the book. So of course those are not covered always within the TRRC, but I'm hoping that by reading the book, at least people would have a better understanding of why those mindsets exist, self-preservation being one of them.
Absolutely. So, as I said, 26 chapters.
Correct.
That's it. And in your prologue, what I want us to do is, obviously we cannot cover all the chapters, but some of the key themes. For instance, in meeting the victims.
Yes.
What sort of feelings, what sort of thoughts were generated in you? But that process, what effect did it have on you? You know, perhaps supporting your thesis, as it were, of this thing. Tell us a bit about meeting the victims.
Meeting the victims, I went through a range of emotions. Shame, you know, when somebody who is old enough to be your father or your mother bears their soul and tells you what they've done to her or him, or somebody that's old enough to be your mother telling you that she was undressed by people that were young enough to be her children. You know, and you sit there and listen to the story, or you sit and listen to a brother, like Ilo Jalo's brother. You listen to what happened to his brother, how his brother died, or you listen to individuals that are still, to this day, looking for their family members. You know, there is some sense of anger towards whatever caused it, whatever caused them that pain. You may feel some anger, but on the other end of the spectrum, you also feel some shame, because it's like, wow, so all this thing was going on in my name, because I am Gambian. It says Gambian government. You are Gambian, and it was being done in your name. What did you do about it? So it's a range of emotions, from shame to anger to sympathy, you know, and empathy with some people, and a desire to see justice for them. You know, like, I have to do something for these people. I can't just, you know, the past is the past. I cannot do anything about what happened before. But now that I know all this, I've met them, I've seen them, I've heard their cries, what else can I do? What should I do to help wipe their tears? And for me, that was my motivation in going to the TRRC.
That's it. And of course, in listening to all of that, you also had to persuade them to essentially come to the TRRC to bear their pain, as it were, in public. How was that process like?
Yes, it wasn't always easy. I had a team of statement takers at the TRRC, wonderful young men and women that were trained in taking statements from individuals, talking to them. You speak to them usually in their language. It wasn't always easy. There were instances where I had to take statements myself from individuals because they felt more comfortable talking to me. There were instances where statements had to be taken by people that were not statement takers, because, you know, it was very sensitive. There were times when you sit with victims, you listen to their stories, as hard as you try to be, as professional as you try to be, it gets to you. And we've had some very emotional moments. Now, convincing them to come before the TRRC, you would be surprised, but a lot of people wanted to tell their stories because it felt that nobody ever heard what happened to them. Nobody ever heard, their pain. And it's almost like a healing process for them to be able to sit down and say, this is what happened to me. And, some out of anger, some out of, it's like a burden, it's almost like an albatross around their neck that, they needed to get off. They needed to free themselves of what happened to them before. So as they narrate these events, of course, you go through the ups and downs of the story with them, the highs and lows. And there were also, it's not always all bleak. There were also some funny instances. Some people narrated their stories with elan, with joy. And one such person would be Mafuji Sonko, who had us all in stitches, even though what happened to him is terrible. But he had us all in stitches because he told it with so much uncommon elan, just joy. And you can get carried away with that.
That's it. And then another theme that really emerges from your writing was what others, your neighbors, what that was doing to our societies. How it was creating divisions
within.
Suddenly, the person you used to have lunch with, perhaps you're going to be the one who's going to pick them up and kill them.
Yes.
So give us the social dimension of these victims. What was happening there?
Well, so
the community. So what's happening to
yes. So during that time, the intelligence agencies, or the intelligence agency, being the NIA, had agents in pretty much everywhere. They had agents and informants everywhere, in every nook and cranny of the Gambia. And I remember one time there was an individual that came to me and wanted to give me information about somebody that they are related to. Out of the goodness of his heart is what he told me. And gave me information about another individual that was very damning. But it turned out that this individual was going to court with that person. They were of the same father, going to court over properties. And he was hoping, I guess, that maybe this guy would get caught in the TRRC net. And of course, then that means he probably stood a better chance of winning the court case because they were fighting over properties. But it's the same thing that was happening in those days. You go to communities, you go within families, you see people reporting each other, friends reporting each other. You just never knew or never know who is who truly is your friend, who truly is your family member. Out of self-preservation, who would report you to the NIA, out of just wanting something that they cannot have and they see you as an obstacle, who would concoct a story to get you into the net of the NIA. You just never know. And this was pervasive throughout the government. We were able to read memos from Yahya Jammeh himself to NIA officers, reports that they were sending to him. We were lucky to have to lay hands on some of these reports. And the level of control that he had among Gambians, I found quite fascinating. I found that he worked hard. You had to work extremely, extremely hard to have that level of control, that detail of who arrest this person, prosecute him, charge him with this particular crime, and don't give him bail in his own handwriting. But these things don't happen out of a vacuum. It was the way our society was set up. Trust became a casualty of society. Family relationship didn't mean as much. Friendships didn't mean as much. You don't know it until you get in some form of trouble, and people just abandon you. They fly away from you. You go to places to visit friends, and they don't want to be around you because they were afraid. They want to self-preserve.
For me, when I was reading the book, it was quite curious, and certainly it occurred to me. I said, well, when we were growing up under the First Republic, one didn't get this sense of division within communities. That I thought, was I too young? I was even beginning to doubt my memory of what happened then. But then it also occurred to me, at what point did we begin to make a turn What were the reasons? What were the forces? How would you see that? Because you've listened to a lot of people.
Right.
You've got this sociological, as it were, dossier, sure dossiers. What is your sense of when the turn, the shift, the reversal, one can call it, began to take place?
So I think it's always been there. Probably it was dormant within us. And I think it took somebody like Jammeh to bring it out of us. Because even during the days of the PPP, I was just talking to the staff here. I grew up here in Bundung, right down the street. We used to go to the arena where they used to have wrestling. And some of these wrestlers, the wrestling teams were based on ethnicity. But we never really thought of it that way. We never really thought of it that way. So those differences never really mattered to us until now it became, politics got involved in it, resources become involved in it, our collectivist nature as a people, the communitarian values or virtues that we I think are inherent within us, we abandoned those, and it became a rat race for wealth, for fame, for political power. And in that rat race, human beings often gravitate towards the familiar. The Mbojis would go with the Mbojis, and the Barrows would go with the Barrows, simply because one is a Mboj, or simply because one is a Barrow. What Mboj can do or what Barrow can do doesn't matter as much as who Barrow is or who Mboj is, simply by his last name, simply by his ethnicity. And,
so it's like the political system that you have, then you begin to see people adapting.
Yes.
To survive.
Yes.
as it were.
Yes, it became a matter of survival for a lot of people, because it's like if you were aligned with certain individuals, even during the PPP regime, if you were aligned with certain individuals, be it in the military or in even within the government, if you were aligned with certain individuals, your chances of success was much higher. And this is normal in pretty much every society you go into. But for a people that are so divided along ethnicity and religion and region, origin, for a people that are divided so much, so many chasms within society, if you are not mindful, the gaps within society tend to widen, because it's such a small country that we pretty much all know each other. I have a problem with you. It's easy for your family, friends to know. Every one of them would know I have an issue with you. And it goes beyond you and I. Now it becomes our family. Now it becomes our region. Now it becomes our tribe or ethnicity. And so it just widens and widens and widens. And I think it took somebody like Yahya Jammeh and the AFPRC or APRC system to bring that out. You know, the tribalism, the regionalism, the classism, all of these things just reared their ugly heads during his time, but it doesn't mean that they were not there. I don't think that like I said, I don't think the differences mattered to us when we were growing up, at least during my day, and of course during your day. I don't think the differences mattered to us then as it does to us today.
That's it. So he brought it up into prominence, into
Pretty
bas relief, as
Yes.
it were. Because somewhere you said that you blame him really for what would you call, he ethnicized politics.
Yes.
And politicized ethnicity.
Yes.
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 Yes. I think maybe on some level, politics has always been ethnicized or regionalized. If you look at the name of the PPP, Protectorate People's Party, it was formed for a subset of individuals or people, right? So that's always there. But then, was it as pervasive as it was during Jammeh's time? We all remember his, charades. We all remember his, speeches against Mandinkas, for instance. Even if during Jawara's time these things existed, we never heard Jawara utter anything against any particular ethnic group. But if you read the book here, I actually have quotes that he used against Mandinkas, aligning them with the UDP, and how that became sort of like the two-headed cobra that he needed to annihilate by all means necessary. So yes, that's why I say he ethnicized politics and politicized ethnicity. Because truth be told, there's a reason today all the 5 APRC members are from Fonyi, of the same ethnic group. That's not by accident.
Absolutely so. And the other theme also that emerged is how he co-opted this co-optation, as it were, the intellectuals, even government officials.
Yes.
Quite interesting, quite extraordinary. Tell us more about that.
So
and
I
the
think
lawyers help, as it were, in writing the decrees.
Correct.
And that sort of thing.
Correct.
The comprador, I call them the comprador
Yes.
class.
Yes, that's an excellent word for them. I should have put that in the book. But yes, I think as Gambians especially, colonialism predisposed us to this addiction to government positions, and our value as a people, as you know, our worth, if you will, is measured in government positions. What position you hold in government, and you know, so you go to school, you get an education. It's not because you want to create the next TV station, but so you can get a job. And often, where is it? In government. And when you get a job in government, what is the highest achievement in government? Is mostly maybe being president. What's the next best thing? Being a minister. The next best thing is permanent secretary, deputy permanent secretary, director, and so on and so forth. These are titles that we are addicted to. And I think because of the way we treat these individuals, ministers, your honor, you're honorable, and what have you, and directors and what have you, the way we treat them is almost godlike. It's with admiration, with respect. You know, when you're a minister, everything about you changes. You're not the same person anymore. Everything about you changes. You become almost godlike in disposition. And Yaya, of course, did not like that too well. He didn't want anybody being too godlike because that was reserved for him. But I think, you know, because of this addiction to government jobs, this addiction to titles, you know, it's like we become junkies for these positions. And Yaya Jammeh had the drug, knowing that he could call a Mamadou Mbodj from anywhere and offer you a position, and you would accept it. Because all of a sudden, everything you've dreamt of since you were a child, wanting to be a minister, has just happened for you today. And because he gave it to you, you feel as if you belong to him. You would do anything to preserve that position. You would do anything to preserve that that title of honorable minister.
Clientelist relationship.
Clientelist relationship, yes.
Quite interesting there. But this is it. I think that was the first time I thought, oh, the dictator is us. Because it got me thinking, the relationship between structures and what people do to survive. So when I was thinking about this, dictator is us, then I thought, what is he saying? Is he picking out certain moral failings in us? Which is a different argument, you know. So this is it. People really adapt to structures. I'm not sure whether, if I want to change that, I should appeal to their moral failings so that they can change. I'm not sure where change will come that way. You know exactly what I mean.
Yes.
So how would you respond to that? That really, it's the structures that were really making people do what they were doing. The moral failings here, that wouldn't really explain what was going on.
Yeah, so I think, you know, no matter how strong a structure is, if it is not undergirded or if the foundation is rotten, it may stand up, but it's not going to last long. Eventually, it would crumble. I think our value system, you know, at least when I was growing up, I have this story that I always tell about myself and my mother and Yasin Mbodj, if you know Bitike Yasin in Bundu. You know, I went there once to buy something from her, and I called her by her name, Yasin Jaima, and she wasn't happy. And I was a little boy at the time, and I cried and went home and told my mother that I just went to buy something, and Yasin basically told me off, or Yasin told me off. And my mother said, oh, wow, I can't believe she would tell you off just for that. Let's go. I'm going to go confront her. Of course, I'm thinking, okay, here go my lion. It's about to go slay the prey. We get to Yasin's shop, and my mother told her, I'm not happy with you because you let my son come here, call you by your name, and you only talk to him, and let him come to me with no blood whatsoever in his mouth. And she pounced on me. Let's say I was disappointed in my mother on that day. And the moral of the story is that I was brought up to treat everyone, not just call you by your, I can't call somebody older than me by their name. That's significant. Because if I call you Koto Momodou Mbodj, that should mean something. It should mean that I treat you as my older brother. It means that I wouldn't lie about you. I shouldn't cheat. I shouldn't involve you in whatever nonsense I'm doing. I should treat you with utmost respect. But at the same time, because I give you that deference, you also owe me that same treatment. You treat me as such. You treat me with that respect. You honor me. You look out for me. You make sure I don't get in trouble. You make sure you guide me.
Uncle,
yes.
I should treat you as a nephew.
Exactly.
So that's the cordiality.
Yes. But then now you look around us here today. You look at what was happening. For instance, neighbors telling on neighbors, brothers telling on brothers, friends betraying one another, and betrayal, duplicity, lies, hypocrisy. These things became normal. It became okay. So long as I'm okay, so long as I stand to be fine, it doesn't matter how fine I am, regardless of what I do to you. And so, yes, there are some moral failings in that regard. These are not Western concepts. These are concepts that we grew up with. This is part of who we are as Africans, as people trapped in this colonial space.
That's it. Now, this brings me to my other point, maybe slightly contentious. This us. Who are the us? It makes it feel as if we are monolithic. I do not see it. So what do you mean by this us? Let me put it in the context of some of the things that you've said in the book. Because when you look at the lawyers and the media, of course, a lot of them were complicitous in one way or another, but they had PDOIS that was resisting, was it independent, they had to burn it. So what I mean is, we had a variety of, as it were, of different views, factions, and that sort of thing. How do you respond to that? I'm just worried about this us.
You don't like the us. I don't either.
Because
I
of
wish,
the
this
diversity
is,
in any society.
And this is one book I wish I didn't have to write. I wish I didn't have to write anything along these lines. But the reality is these things happened. And for me, yes, I do pick on certain individuals for their role, but I do also make an exception. For instance, you talked about PDOIS. I do mention Halifa Saleh, for instance, and his stance during the witch hunt. I did mention the UDP and their resistance during those days. I mentioned Data Haidara and his resistance. I mentioned people like Data Fasose. So I mentioned individuals, and it's not that those were the only people that stood up. I know lots of lawyers who stood up and defended individuals when people were afraid to defend them. But then if I want to focus on, on the people that did the right thing, I could write a whole book about those individuals. But they were not the problem. The problem were the individuals that decided that it's okay to write a law that abuses your own citizens. That it's okay to write a law that appends the 1970 Constitution. That, that is okay because the president asks you to go around and hunt for witches, your fellow human beings, and you go around and force them, drinking concoctions. That is okay. So when I say us, I'm referring to those people, but I'm also referring to anyone that could have done something and didn't, one. But also importantly for me, if you can quantify what you've done for your country, you haven't done enough. It's just that simple for me. If I can sit here and say, I did A, B, C, D, E for Gambian people, I have not done enough. If you did enough, you wouldn't be able to quantify it.
On that point, we'll go for a short break. Don't go away. This is an interesting conversation here. We'll be back right soon.
As the fastest growing GSM company in the Gambia, QCell has the widest 4G plus coverage in the country, 3 times faster internet speed than our competitors. So switch now and dial *335# and enjoy what true 4G feels like. QCell, the Gambia's trusted network.
Welcome back to The Viewpoint. I'm Mamadou Mbouch. I've got here my guest today is Alhaji Seydou Barrow, who was the Director of Research and Investigations of the TRRC, and he's written a book titled The Dictator Is Us, My Truth Commission Journey. And we're discussing some of the themes that emerge, as it were, in the book. Yes, so now what I want us to do, which you go into the psychological profiles to some extent of, should I call them the big 4 or the big 5?
Yes.
That in itself, be it from Jammeh, Edward Singate, Sana
Yes.
Sabali,
Yes.
Yankuba Toure.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more. What lessons, as it were, if one can call it that, do you tease, as it were, out of this that ordinary people, some of us, need to know?
So yes, on the psychological profile, I'm not a psychologist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
surely certain patterns of
yes,
behavior,
yes,
you'd see
patterns
would
of
emerge.
behavior.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Like
especially with Yahya Jammeh. When you read the book, which I know you did, but you can see a lot of comparison with other dictators in other places. He's, wanting to be a god, like the love for titles. You saw some of the most ridiculous titles that some of these African leaders and other leaders elsewhere had, but also their own relationship, where they came from before they became, AFPRC, how they grew up, how Yahya Jammeh grew up in Kanilai and in Buyam and joining the military. And Edward Singate, with his mixed race background, Yankuba Toure. So I spoke to all of them, every single one of them, except for Sadibou Haidara, of course.
yes.
But I spoke to all of them in depth. I had lengthy interviews with all of them. And of course, not Yahya Jammeh.
Yes.
Yes, but I spoke to people that were very, very close to him, family members, friends, colleagues in the military, and so on and so forth. I had extensive interviews with various people, different people, people that still support him, and so on and so forth. For me, if you were to ask me, growing up, you can see a pattern in all of them, in their backgrounds. You can hear it in their frustrations in the military during those days, especially their frustrations with foreign forces on the soils of the Gambia. Their frustrations with the corruption in their mind, at least, that was rampant during those days, in their mind, according to them. You could see that about them. These were some of the things that led to them taking action. But on a larger scale, corruption is a security, is a risk to any nation. Pervasive corruption in any country can lead to disaster for that country. Extreme inequality. You look at somebody like Yahya, brilliant person, intelligent somebody, by most accounts, very smart individual, that he stood no chance of, realizing his dreams was a motivation for somebody like him. Edward Singate, the same. We remember when they took over, Sana would go around offices, make sure people were on time at work, make sure people get off the road for him, and so on and so forth. Sana was a stickler for discipline. Things have to be a certain way. That was his thing. if you ask some people, they may say a bit reckless, or reckless in fact. But he was a stickler for discipline. Now, was he going about the right way to enforce that discipline by shooting at or asking his orderlies to shoot at individuals, or going to offices and embarrassing office staff and what have you? So for me, the lessons for all of us is about inequality, is about poverty in society, that it is a responsibility on all of us.
Breeding ground, is it like
Yes,
the breeding ground?
it's a breeding ground for a
like
lot,
that?
for a lot. Foreign forces in a country, because during those days, the Nigerian forces that were here were not being paid by the Gambia government, from my understanding, but they lived a better life than the average Gambian officer.
When at the parallel now, we've got a comic now.
Exactly,
Quite
exactly,
interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
So these are all problems within a society, and the lessons for us should have been that we cannot outsource our security to other people, one, and two, the difference in, for instance, in pay. If you are an officer in the Gambian army and somebody is a private, what is the pay scale? What is the difference? Do you live a life, that I can only dream of, that I can never live because I am going to be enlisted for the rest of my life? What is the pay scale difference between these individuals? The military or the security forces should never be a last resort for people. It should be out of, I love this country, I'm willing to die for this country, I'm willing to defend this country, and that's why I'm going to be in the military. Not because I cannot find anything else, and so I'm going to join the military. I think for me, these are all things that spell disaster, and I think these are all lessons that we could all learn from.
Absolutely. I'm connected to this with all of them. That sense of being hard done by,
Yes.
as it were,
Yes.
by society.
Yes.
So I call it afterwards the politics of envy. So you've got this motivation, this being as who was it that said that, Yami from the Jola ethnic group, remember Kukoi Sambasanyang as well. So there was this sense of they being the permanent underclass.
Yes. Yes.
So they
Yes.
want to redress
Yes.
that. So which sort of sometimes gets me going. Then all the talk about rampant corruption and all the rest of it,
Yes.
these are what psychologists call rationalizations.
Absolutely.
For you to-
Yes.
And when I put it in the context of even Africa-wide, you've had coups all over. So how much of what happened to us was the Gambian thing? How much of it was we're just part of a broader current? I often wonder, what do you think about
So
that?
yeah, when you look at Gambia, how different is Gambia from Senegal or Liberia or Sierra Leone or any other African country? You travel around Africa, yeah, we may all speak different languages. We may have a few more buildings than the others, few more high-rise buildings than others, but these problems are everywhere you go. So these are not unique Gambian problems. These are African problems. Of course, colonialism has a lot to do with what we are faced with today, but also we've had opportunities to self-correct. But because we are more inclined towards individualism, building the country is secondary to building ourselves. So we go to school, we get jobs with UN, we get jobs, senior government positions, we build our businesses. We give just enough just to say we gave some. And we find comfort in that. So no, it's not unique to Gambians, I don't think. I think this is an African problem. I think African governments are meant, or at least operate in such a way that they serve those in government first and foremost before they serve the people. And that's across the board in Africa.
Well, this is the king. So you see that as a structural problem.
Yes.
How?
A structural problem that goes to the
How do
value
we-
system that we have. Because, service means service. There is a reason you have public servant. It says servant, civil service. It doesn't say civil overlord. It doesn't say civil master. But you look at the government, those in government today live a far better life than the people that they serve.
Where is the escape hatch You know what I mean?
Well, so
I mean, we've been talking about this. I mean, the literature
Yes.
is unbelievable.
Yes, yes.
Everybody's been talking
Yes.
about it. But it seems on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
still, we are going to say this is still a colonial state, essentially.
it is.
An extractive
Yes.
central government.
Yes.
That's the relationship
Yes.
between the government and the people.
Yes.
You're just extractive, you're just there to take.
Yes.
But this is exactly what is still going on.
Correct.
Then how do you escape if you do not want to dismantle it?
Well, and that's the key word. So if you talk to anyone that knows me, one of the phrases I keep repeating a billion times is that Africa shall never rise until it dismantles the foundations that it sits on today. And by dismantling, it doesn't mean destroy. It means taking apart every bit of that foundation that we sit on today. We have to question pretty much everything. These things don't happen in a vacuum. This tribalism, regionalism, these things don't happen. Europe is divided along tribal lines. You know, so tribalism is not the problem. It's us, the individuals that are in leadership, that are causing these problems, if you ask me. So no, the escape hatch is in dismantling the vehicle that we sit in, first and foremost. Dismantle the chairs that we sit on. Dismantle the armrest. Dismantle the seat belt that is claiming to keep you safe. Dismantle everything around you. Meaning, ask questions, the tough questions. Do we need a president with all these powers? Why? Do we need parliament as it is? Do we even need to have elections every 4 years as it is today? These are things that we have to ask, and I understand these are very difficult questions, and the people seeking power and those in power are not interested in that today. And again, that goes back to the value system, because it comes down to what they call fankum fankum, kuneka ak sabopa, kuneka sabopa ngatahawal, not anybody else. And that's a significant value impediment in us that we need to overcome if we are to sit back and dismantle that system, because it goes beyond itself, it goes beyond an individual. It's about the people, it's about the community.
That's it. I once read somebody who said, you know, we talk about the ship of state. He said maybe the problem is not the captain, the problem is with the ship.
Yes, absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
probably-
The system is meant to produce a captain of that caliber. So you can change captains all you want. You will end up with the captains you will end up with a captain with similar characteristics as the one that you got rid of. Your chances of that happening are extremely always high.
That's it. So, TRRC work done. How long did it take you to write the book? I wonder. When did
So
it begin?
I started writing the book during COVID. I
Okay,
had already
2020, was it?
yes,
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
already left the TRRC, and that's when I started writing the book. It took me, I guess, up to last month I was editing. But also, I don't want to take credit for all of this. I had immense amount of help from a number of Gambians, individuals that helped me and go through the book and edit it, and of course disagree with certain things.
Yeah.
There were I had moments where I had to throw out whole chapters from the book because for one reason or another, it just didn't fit in, or we decided that it doesn't belong there, and I got rid of whole chapters. But yeah, so it took me almost a little bit over 2 years of writing.
Afterwards, 2017 happened. 2016, 2017 happened. In fact, you were working in that. What do you think has changed? What is changing? You so close up in many ways, getting all of this evidence of how things were. What do you think of here again? Another bend, another curve, or a swerve from that. How do you see this renewal? With 2017, there people had a sense of renewal. How do you see it?
Well, the renewal was aborted, unfortunately. I don't think it was ever allowed to mature. 2017 came, all of us were hopeful. I came back home in 2018, hoping and praying, oh, this is my opportunity to contribute to my country and help bring this country is, you know, it was a moment of hope for all of us. Unfortunately, the baby was aborted before it was delivered. You know, we sacrifice accountability at the altar of political expedience, political interest. So because we derailed from then, I cannot sit here and say that, well, there is a renewal or things have changed. Yes, things have changed, because in the old days, I cannot sit here and speak and say what's on my mind without worrying about some NIA officer coming dead in the night or broad daylight and whisking me away in some tinted glasses. But unfortunately, you know, we also remember the arrest of, for instance, Madi Jobate. For what? We remember the arrest of Dr. Ismail Assise. For what? And so on and so forth. These things, you know, make you remember, wow, okay, what has, you know, these things used to happen. Yes, granted, they came back home eventually, but what was the reason for that abuse? What was the reason for things like that? So for me, is we're on the precipice.
Yes, but don't you think in any transition, much of the old remains?
Yes, but that is a problem. If, for instance, the old was succeeding, I don't have a problem with the old remaining, but the old was not succeeding. The old wasn't what we wanted. There was a reason Gambians wanted change. And, you know, unfortunately, if you still maintain the old, then you can't really say there is a renewal or that you've changed.
It seems as if that was more of a wish, an ideal, I don't know, destination. There was somewhere you wanted to go, but nobody in his right mind thought that things had changed. Hope, because here, in the book, you'd say that even with the 1994 coup, you were like, things could move on. Hope.
Yes.
There as well. I mean, who was it that said that hope is commanded by failure?
Yes.
I sort of suspect, this is a wider point here, that sometimes we underrate, or I'm not sure, the sense of self. We overrate what we think that we can do, or we underrate the problems that we have. So each time there is this hope lingering, but I'm not sure whether our analysis, our conceptualization of post-independence Africa, I'm not sure whether we've got the terms right. I'm not sure whether we've got the levers. We are in charge of the levers. So I'm afraid that we're just going around in circles of hope, disappointment, hope, disappointment, hope, disappointment. Or is that life? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is some disconnect between, I guess, our reality and what we hope for. That's why, you know, when you plan, you don't plan on projections alone. You should plan on what's real. Could Gambia have been better off today, or could Gambia have been in a better place today than it is currently? I think it could have been. I think that was a possibility. Now, is that based on realistic hope or realities on the ground? Back in 2017, if you had asked me, I would say it was based on what I know is possible. Today, if you ask me, I would say I'm still hopeful for Gambia, but not what it is operating today, not based on what I see today. I think it would get better, probably maybe when people like me are dead and gone. I don't see it happening in my lifetime, because again, it goes back to that system that we have in place, that ship that you mentioned. We are not ready to dismantle that ship. We just want to change the captain. And when the next captain comes, he would just appoint his own lieutenants and maintain the system, because it fits him. It fits his desires, because we will worship him. We will tell him, you are the best thing since sliced bread. We will tell him, you are our savior. We will tell him, you are our Moses that will lead us to the promised land. And he would believe that. He would think he really is. So he too would go around and say, I did this for this country. I did this. I constructed 300 kilometers of roads. I constructed 3,000 classrooms. He would say these things because in his head, he did it. He really believes that because that's what people around him tell him. Sir, you did this. He's never constructed a road. It's not his money. He's never constructed a classroom. It's not his money. But that's what he feels that he did. That's what his people tell him he did. It's his administration. It's his ship. The lieutenants all, or lieutenants, all report to him. So anything that happens is by virtue of him, his abilities, his management, his leadership, and all credit is due unto him. That's simple. So that's not going to change.
Yeah, this is interesting because we tend to say that youth being the most potent force for change, that sort of thing. Now we are told that 65% of our population under 25. Do you get that sense that this youth, they've got a political purpose? There was a time when people had political purposes. You wanted independence. We could rally, everybody rallied around that. Everything afterwards, everything came off the rails afterwards.
Yes. Yes.
Do you get that sense with your youth?
I was invited to a high school or senior secondary school, they call them now, a few days ago, and I had a conversation with the kids, because these are teenagers.
Of course.
I had a conversation with them and asked some probing questions of them, just to understand their mindset. What are they thinking? I would ask them, what do you want to be? Why do you want to be that? And I thought their answers were pretty interesting. I think what they call the youth bulge, which is the 60-something% youth today. Some, yes, they have a political purpose, but do they have the right political purpose? Is the question. You know, is because you can have a political purpose. I mean, all these politicians have a political purpose, but do they have the right political purpose? Is it about self-aggrandizement? Is it about maintaining the system as is today? You know, the old days, you hear the Nkrumahs, the Kwame Nkrumahs, and the things that they stood for. These were revolutionary ideas. You don't hear those ideas from our youths anymore. It's more aligning with the system that we have today than reinventing this system because it's not working for them. Very different.
Absolutely, this is quite curious. Because I was just thinking the other day that perhaps with the first generation of leaders, the focus perhaps was more on the political aspects of things. Then I was wondering perhaps what's going to be my purpose now? Then I thought of what Clinton was said. It's the economy, stupid. Maybe nobody really came up with a good economic model because everything else, whether peace,
Revolves.
everything would depend on the good economic model, as it were. That's where we are failing, though, aren't we? And essentially, that's the heart of the matter.
Absolutely.
I've even heard Lee Kuan Yew sort of once ticked off in his own way. People had been Nyerere and Kaunda for this failure.
Yes. Yes.
Should this be our political purpose now? Economics. We have to build our economics.
Yes, and again, yes, absolutely. Right now our economic model is the foundation of it is begging and borrowing. When I was at that high school, I asked them, how many of you want to grow up to become beggars? Nobody. I asked them, how many of you want to survive on borrowing and begging? Not a single one of them. But that's what the nation survives on. And so, yes, the economic model that that is because you can't, poverty is coercive. It's extremely coercive when you are poor. And when you are poor and you don't have values, that's even worse. Poverty plus lack of values is terrible for any set of people, for any human being. So yes, I think the economy, of course, is critical. You can't do much without a good economy. But you look around you. When was the last time we had a good economy? Never. So, and this is not some, revelation. I mean, we know it, unless, of course, one settles for mediocrity and you think that our airport is a 10-star airport, or that these roads that we have today are the best roads that we could have had. Unless you settle for such mindset, we've never really had a good economy. I mean, we've always depended on begging and borrowing. We call it aid, we call it development partners. Ultimately, it's just going around and begging people. Ultimately, it's just about borrowing and paying taxes, and that's what our money goes to. Few people survive, the rest hustle. to survive.
And without that base, most things would go awry, possibly. Sort of coming towards the end, TRRC, there was a government-wide paper. They will implement, they said, all of it. But you've mentioned something, saying that there appears to be a fixation on prosecutions.
Yes.
To you, the bigger problem, you're not sure whether we've put it in focus, as it were, the societal fissures. Just a minute or two, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah,
what do you mean? Because most people here would like, the prosecution. People tend to emphasize on the prosecution.
Yes, I must say that I'm quite impressed with your mind. I have to say that. Sorry, that's completely off. But yes, I did mention that I think it's wrong to fixate ourselves on prosecutions, because everything that was wrong in the Gambia, not everything that was wrong in the Gambia was a criminal matter. And so you cannot, it's like the person with the hammer that sees the every problem with as a nail or something along that saying. You know the saying I'm trying to say. What happened is much more than criminal, criminal matters. We have to have that conversation. There were lots of things that went wrong that were not necessarily criminal in nature.
Absolutely, the societal wrong, the societal wound.
Yes.
Which is a slightly different thing.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alhaji Saidi Barrow. Fantastic book. I wonder, where can we get it? Anybody wants to buy it?
Yeah, so it's going to be launched tomorrow at Ebunjan Theatre. And yes, there will be a few copies.
On Friday?
Yes,
all right.
At 3 o'clock at Ebunjan Theatre. Right now it's on Amazon UK. They are trying to get it on Amazon US, so people in the US and UK can get it, and Europe as well. But in the Gambia, it will be available tomorrow, and hopefully the publishers would work to get it at Timbuktu as well. And just one last thing, I'm not getting any dime out of this book. The proceeds, my end of it, is all going to the victims.
Absolutely. Thank you very much there. And fantastic prose stylist as well. I read it in one day.
I was shocked, and I could tell.
Made easier by
I could
the
tell.
style, your
I
style.
could tell. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Viewers, until next time, I'm Amadou Mboshi. Goodbye.